Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Hello, you're welcome to today's edition of Money Radio on Leadership Podcast. Money Radio brings you the latest developments in Nigeria's business and economy cycles and issues of businesses around the world. My name is Innocent Odo, and today we have bringing you a very important topic, which has to do with the U.S. commitment of $55 million to help fight food insecurity in Nigeria. It might interest you to know that President Joe Biden made a pledge at the recent G7 summit in Germany, where he said that his country will make an additional commitment of $55 million to Nigeria to help fight food insecurity in the country. This fund is supposed to be administered by the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, which will take charge of the disbursement of this very important fund. But then the fund have to go through approval by the U.S. Congress. And so Nigerians, we wait eagerly for this assistance from the United States to come right now that the country is battling with food insecurity everywhere. And we can assure you that we're going to keep tabs on the development and how these funds will come into the country and how they are going to be disbursed. I'm not alone in the studio. I am here with my colleague and the co-analyst, Kes Hammond. Kes, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Innocent.
And on the virtual platform, we have Paul Wadima, with whom we're going to also do justice to this very important topic. Paul, if you can hear me, you're welcome. Paul
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Now, can I start with you, Kes? $55 million pledge. That's an additional pledge for Nigeria to fight food insecurity in the country. And that's a very positive development for the country, especially now that we are facing food crisis. If you go to the average Nigerian market today, you discover one thing. The food inflation is high, more than about 23% right now. And the prices of basic food items are actually skyrocketing at the moment. And so this particular fund, we can't wait for it to reach our shores so that it will help in no small way to cushion the impact of the looming food crisis that we're already having now. So, Kes, what is your take on this?
Well, let me just correct one impression you just made. You said looming food crisis.
Yes.
We're already
we're already here.
Yeah. So we have a food crisis. Just about 10 minutes ago, before we came to studio, I was listening to a program on the local radio station, and they were talking about how people are exploring alternatives to the normal food we have been used to eating. And those alternatives include eating rotten tomatoes.
That could be very deadly.
There is a way, and those things come with some diseases. There's a way you call it Isha or something like that. Locally, that's how it's called.
Okay.
And onions. People just do mixture, and because the thing will go through a process of boiling, they say okay, and it's eaten because they think the germs will be killed there. And that is at the home level. At the commercial level, for people who cook, I'm talking about local restaurants, local cook shops.
Yes.
People want to make profits, and of course, they turn to those criminal means of making profit, cutting corners, that is giving rotten food. Yes. So we have a food crisis. The food crisis is here.
It's here. Yeah.
Now, having said that, a food crisis is already here. The move by President Biden or the U.S. government to give an additional $55 million to assuage the food security situation, on the surface is good, but for the common man who may think that that 55 million will come directly and have direct impact on the local economy, or make the country more secure, or vulnerable communities more secure in terms of food, it's not necessarily going to happen. You know that it's going to be administered by some agencies, including the USAID.
Yes.
Those people who are going to administer those funds, they are working in a capacity of maybe consultants and a host of other capacities they are going to be operating. They are going to be paid. Where do you think that money is going to be? That money is going to come from? It is their own people, their own citizens that are going to be employed to administer that fund, and they are going to be paid from that 55 million. That is it. That is fact. And as a result of that, not everything is going to come. And usually, such a grant or such an aid is going to come in the form of mostly consultancy, assistance, technical assistance. Yes, you do it this way. You can do it this way. It's better done this way. You will produce more food this way. Not that they are going to bring physical food. Maybe rarely, but usually that is not the case. So, and usually those things take time. We are actually sinking deeper. My fear is the pace at which we are sinking deeper into food insecurity is faster than the grant is coming.
The help that is coming.
The help that is coming.
Is the danger
because that is the danger, because these things are usually technical assistances, and when you are trained to do certain things to become more food secure, then you go to work to implement whatever you are trained to do. And that being the case, you find that usually the thing does not get directly to the people who it's meant to impact. Lastly, what I'm saying now on this matter, not lastly on the show.
Yes.
Lastly, when it comes to these issues, usually it's the Africans or the people who are impacted most that know how to distribute these funds. That is, if it is to be distributed. But usually it is not distributed that way. So the point I'm making is the people who are going to administer this fund or these funds, just like many technical aids that have come to African countries or less developed countries, many technical aids that have come to this part of the world are actually administered by people who don't know the nitty-gritty of our problems. And so when they're administering these funds, they may miscalculate or misjudge where these funds are supposed to go to, and then they may not have the optimal impact. On the other hand, if these funds are actually given to the locals, usually, or the funds stand the risk of actually being stolen. You see, so we are in a dilemma.
Yes.
We are in a dilemma. So, good thing I praise President Biden and his administration's initiative to assist Nigeria with 55 million. That is a step in the right direction. It's just that I fear the administration of it may not impact the vulnerable communities optimally.
All right. The fear is that the implementation might not make any positive impact on the vulnerable communities for which this fund is actually meant. Paul, if you're with us, can we have your reaction to this?
Okay. My take on it is this. What we are discussing is at best hypothetical, because from the information we have, the $55 million depend on approval by the Congress. So what if the Congress refused to approve it? What if the Congress refused to approve it? We know that the U.S. Congress is predominantly Democrats now. but there may be reason why they will not approve it. So that aside, it should worry us Nigerians and Africans that we are the crying babies of the world. This is because if you listen to the US ambassador, Ms. Leonard, the $55 million is because of the hardship, sufferings of Nigerians as a result of the impact of the Ukraine-Russian war or the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It is the fallout from the Russia invasion of Ukraine, which has had serious impact on global economy, on global food security. So the question we ask ourselves, why is it that it's only Africa? Why is it that Nigeria, 62 years after independence, is among the most vulnerable people as a result of a war being fought by two East European countries? Because we have to interrogate this matter from that perspective. What is wrong with us? What is wrong with Nigeria that the food security of the country, Africa's most populous nation, Africa's biggest economy, the food security of Nigeria is threatened by a war being fought by two countries in Eastern Europe? It is the result of our negligence, poor leadership, poor investment in agriculture over the past 62 years. It has, like Chinua Achebe of blessed memory used to say, Nigeria's problem is basically lack of leadership. If Nigeria has the required leadership, our agricultural productivity should be enough to be able to take care of the food needs of Nigerians and export excess and not be vulnerable to political crisis around the world. So we have to interrogate this from the perspective of our failure to do the right thing. Because if we had done the right thing, because I felt sad in my spirit that Nigeria, the most populous country in Africa, an oil producing nation, that ought to be one of the richest countries in the world, benefiting from the oil windfall of the Ukraine-Russian war, is now at its knees because of Ukraine-Russian war, to the level that we have to be giving food aid, because that $55 million amount to food aid to Nigeria. We have become like Somalia and other nations, beggarly nations, and we are looking at anticipation, waiting for the US Congress to give us $55 million. Even the $55 million cannot get to many Nigerians, like Case rightly pointed out. The bulk of it will go in consultants. Then, they say that it's for the vulnerable people in Nigeria. Who are the vulnerable people? Of course, there are some kind of list by Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, disputed list they have there, that nobody can actually know who are those in that list, who are supposedly vulnerable. So, but the truth of the matter is that this issue, this story, is at the heart of the matter of poor leadership in Nigeria. How did we allow our agricultural sector to deteriorate to the level that Nigerians cannot eat bread because there is war in Ukraine and Russia? Nigerians cannot be able to get fertilizer because Russia is fighting war. It speaks to our poor management of our agricultural resources. Look at the vast land we have in this country. We ought to be self-sufficient in agriculture. We ought to be the food basket of Africa and indeed the world. But here we are. America want to give us gifts. They want to give us food to eat because we have failed to provide food for ourselves. What they are going to do for us is not sustainable. I think it is better that Nigerians begin to look at how are we going to have sustainable food security in Nigeria. The idea of waiting for the US Congress to approve this $55 million is neither here nor there. So I think the best thing is for us to interrogate, why did we get here? Why are we in a position where we have to be sympathized with? Because Ms. Leonard was saying that they are sympathetic to the suffering of Nigerians.
Sorry to interrupt you, Paul. Yes, indeed, I think it's an indictment on the leadership of the country that will have to wait for the US to give an additional $55 million for food security in Nigeria. But at the moment, the situation is really dicey, and there's nothing we can do about this one except to accept it first, and then look at the areas that you are talking about. It will interest you to know that in the last couple of years, Nigerians have found it difficult to actually produce more food because of the insecurity going on in the country, especially in the northern part of the country. And so fixing this particular menace, particular scourge called insecurity, becomes an imperative thing to do for Nigeria, especially the Nigerian government. Right now, it is not happening, and a whole lot of people, the farmers that actually give us the food that we eat, are chased away from their farms. Are you an example
I think that is where we need their help. If US really want to help us, they should help us to fight insecurity. That is why we need them. We need technology to help us fight insecurity so that our farmers can go to farm. It is the biggest challenge we are in now. And the only sustainable solution to it is for our farmers to be free to go to the farms. And the United States have the technology. They have the drone technology. They have satellite technology. They can share it with us. They can help us in that perspective. That is far more important, far more better than giving us $55 million to go and feed ourselves for one day, when the problem is a problem that has been lingering for so long. So we need sustainable solution to security challenges in Nigeria. Okay, you imagine a situation where farmers cannot access their farms, where they are killed in their farms, where they have to pay money to be able to access their farms. They pay bandits, terrorists to be able to access their farms. Fertilizers and other inputs are not available. These are the areas we want Americans to help us. We need them to not to give us fish. They should teach us how to fish. That is what Nigeria needs right now.
Yes, indeed. Paul, if you can hear me, there's also a collaboration going on between Nigeria and the US on how to deploy technology as well to tackle insecurity. So that is already on the table, and both countries are actually working out modalities and on how to
tackle insecurity. Fine, that's good.
Yes,
that's good. But it's beyond that too. You know that we are having a problem with funding in agriculture. You know that we are having a problem with funding in agriculture. Our agricultural funding is abysmal. Under the Mobutu Declaration of 2003, Nigeria is supposed to be budgeting 10% of its budgetary allocation to agriculture. Now, a very less than 2%. The only time in Nigeria's history where we have budgeted more than 10% was during the time of President Yaradua, when we budgeted 13% of our annual budget to agriculture. But even at that, over 60% of that money went into overhead costs and didn't actually get to the real farmers. But at least it was the first administration in recent time that was able to break the Mobutu protocol rank, and we invested 13% of our annual budget. Since then, we have been hovering around 1 and 2%. So that is why our agricultural sector is the way it is. So we need to reevaluate our policy in the agricultural sector. We need to domesticate the international treaties we have signed. The Mobutu Protocol need to be domesticated. The National Assembly must ensure that it is enforced in our budget annually, so that when the executive brings the budget, they will look at it and say, are you sure this budgetary allocation to agriculture met the Mobutu Protocol? If it did not, the National Assembly should throw the budget back to the executive to go and work on it until it reach that threshold. That is the beginning of the solution to our problem. And you already know, I don't know whether you are aware, the Mobutu Protocol was reviewed in 2014 by the Malabo Declaration. The Malabo Declaration in 2014 returned the 10% allocation to agricultural sector. But it also added another dimension. Okay, we are going to meet this target, but we should go beyond it, so that half party in the continent by 2050. So the Mobutu Protocol has gone beyond 10% to fight against poverty. So this is the angle that the National Assembly can help Nigerians to enforce. We must be able to devote 10% or more of our national budget to agriculture. Our agriculture is poorly funded, and most of our agriculture is smallholder farmers, and we need to make sure that the funds are getting to them.
All right, Paul, thank you so much for your contributions. Paul is waxing really strong there, passionate about agriculture, quoting the Maputo Declaration,
as always,
the Malabo Declaration, and all the declarations around the world, all geared towards making sure that there is productivity in the agri sector and there is adequate investment to actually drive the process. Yeah. There's something very instructive that he raised there is the issue of also why we have not been able to address the issue of insecurity in the country. Now that has gone a long way in depleting some of the food, the food system that we have. Or some of the farmers cannot even, go to farms, and some of the food store is being depleted. So I don't understand why we should be having this kind of crisis at this point in time and not being able to tackle it. I'm waiting for the U.S. government to send us $55 billion to address this issue. When, of course, it's evident. If you go to many places in the country, arable land everywhere, young men who are jobless whose energy can actually be deployed to the farms, take care of this challenge that we have now. Yes, before we round up.
Yeah, so Paul makes a good point. If you look back a few decades, even in the absence of the implementation of this Malabo Accord or the Maputo Accord, Nigeria was, to some extent, fairly food sufficient.
Yes.
Nigeria was fairly self-sufficient in food production. I remember during the Liberian War, when that country ran out of food, it is Nigerian yams that were actually flooding the market, both as commercial goods, yes, and as gifts, just as just aid. Yes, Nigerian yams, and Nigerians never complained that there was food insecurity at that time in the 90s. People hardly complain about food in the 1990s.
Yes.
So this thing degenerated progressively, and it was mainly due to insecurity. While the Maputo Accord not being implemented is part of it, and of course, we know that we'll do better as a country if that accord is implemented. But even before then, Nigerians were producing food, not to this extent where people are resorting to rotten food, and it's all as a result of insecurity. So let's be frank, this government has to do something about insecurity if we are to move anywhere. Otherwise,
is it that we are the insecurity situation has gone beyond the capacity of the government forces to handle them, or there's somehow some people believe there's a conspiracy somewhere that has sustained this insurgency? And look at the impact on the nation. Less food, more people going hungry, and I think according to the UN some time ago, about 18 million Nigerians, especially in the northern part, are actually facing serious food crisis right now as we talk. That is not a small number. 18 million people, that's not a small number. So whatever it will take the government and their allies to ensure that they need a new focus. You need to re-strategize. Is it that we're now yielding more grounds to the terrorists and we're surrendering land to them? I don't really get this thing, and I need more explanation on this, maybe probably from a government agency.
Yeah, probably from a government agency. But the fact remains that this thing is not funny and it's getting worse. Having a filled stomach does not mean you are nourished.
Of course, yes.
Have you seen people who drink mere gari, cassava flour? Not cassava flour. Well, I don't know how we call it outside, but it's gari, mere gari, and make it tasty or use as meat or fish, pepper and salt. Just to tell you the level of malnourishment people in certain quarters are facing. And many people are suffering and smiling. That's the fact. This thing is affecting households. Instead, I was listening to a program just before coming to the studio, and people were complaining. People are complaining. People are suffering. You know, the normal Nigerian is a proud Nigerian, is a proud person, and wouldn't like to come out to say, I'm hungry, or to come out and beg. But that's the level at which the country is degenerating into if care is not taken. So something has to be done, and it has to start with the issue of security. Once security is tackled, then the grants that we are talking about, the technical assistance we're talking about from the US, will make meaning. It will have an impact. But if, apart from that, you need people to go and farm. If you can't have people farming, no matter what technical assistance comes in, it will have limited impact.
Yeah, just before we go, Paul raised an issue of managing even the resources, just like you also raised the issue. There's a fear that once it gets to the hands of Nigerians, it might be frittered away. But this one is going to be managed and administered by the USAID.
That's the good part.
Yes.
That's the good part. You know,
so that means the USAID has taken over the management of they're not a government within Nigeria to manage resources for Nigeria. Is that what that means?
No, they just have people on the ground, agencies on the ground, and people on the ground who would identify areas of need and
pushing resources.
Yes, pushing those resources there. My only fear is that they may not have real knowledge of where the need is, and the local nuances of these places to make the maximum impact. If they do, I think managing it by themselves, even though they are going to be paid from that aid, it's not a bad thing, because like Mr. Paul said, the locals may actually do more harm than good when it comes to,
yes,
sending this.
Okay, we've been spent the last 30 minutes or thereabout talking about the $55 million additional fund to Nigeria to fight food insecurity. And we're asking how far this can go in ensuring that we resolve this problem and bring back Nigerians. But of course, we are facing a more serious crisis, which is insecurity, that's driven the farmers away from the farm, and thus having this massive crisis in our hands. So it behoves on government and all stakeholders to come together to see how we're going to resolve this issue of insecurity once and for all, so that even the additional funding from the US government can make the technical meaning or whatever meaning it will add to the food sector in the country. It's on that note that we'll come to the end of today's edition of Morning Radio on Leadership Podcast. And I've been in the studio with Kes Hammond. Kes, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure. And on the virtual platform, we've had a contribution of Paul Owadema. Paul, it's been a pleasure having you on the program today. Thank you so much for joining us. So we say goodbye and have a wonderful day until come again next time. Stay blessed and God.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.